This is the US weekly market wrap for the week ending Friday, the 20th of May 2016. The major averages ended the week on a relatively flat note, with the tech-heavy NASDAQ composite outperforming to close the week higher by 1.1%. The S&P 500 closed out the week marginally to the upside by 0.3%, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average lagged 39 points or 0.2% to finish slightly lower. Monday's trading included two sets of economic data, with the New York Fed's Empire State Manufacturing Survey for May coming in significantly weaker than expected at negative 9.02, with consensus expectations at 7, showing that regional New York manufacturing contracted, with softer demand and reduced shipments potentially suggest another flat year for manufacturing. The National Association of Homebuilders Housing Market Index for May came in at 58, 1 point lower than consensus, indicating expansion for the housing sector, with housing sales being the strongest component of the survey. However, the report did indicate an unusual lack of interest from first-time buyers. In stock news, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger's Berkshire Hathaway demonstrated particular interest in the technology sector, acquiring 9.8 million shares of Apple, adding to their position in IBM and offering finance to a consortium of investors looking to bid on Yahoo. Berkshire's acquisition in Apple resulted in the stock jumping 3.7%, IBM gained $1.74 to $149.46, and Yahoo gained $1 to $37.48. The 10-year note closed higher by 5 basis points to 1.75%. The US dollar was slightly softer, with energy and material-related sectors stronger. The Dow Jones closed up 175 points, the NASDAQ closed higher by 58 points or 1.22%, and the S&P 500 closed higher by 20 points. Tuesday had three sets of economic data, with the Consumer Price Index month-over-month change coming in at 0.4%, with the consensus expecting 0.3%. The report indicated that a 10% increase in gasoline prices was the driver of the above consensus results. The core CPI was 0.2% for the month. However, the year-on-year rate slipped 0.1% for the second month in a row, indicating year-on-year inflation is currently positioned at 2.1%, right on the tipping point of the Federal Reserve's 2% inflation targeting. Housing starts came in above consensus, while housing permits came in marginally below consensus. Housing starts were 1.172 million, with a consensus expectation of 1.135 million, and housing permits were 1.116 million, with a consensus expecting 1.13 million. The year-on-year rate for housing starts is currently down 1.7%, and the year-on-year rate for permits is currently soft at 7.2%. All three components of the Fed's Industrial Production Index came in above expectations, with a change of month-over-month production at 0.7%, with consensus expecting 0.2%, and manufacturing month-over-month came in at 0.3%, with consensus at 0.2%, and the capacity utilization rate came in at 75.4%, when a consensus of 74.9% was expected. In market news, it was disclosed that George Soros had doubled his bearish positioning on the SPDR ETF and increased his holdings in gold. This added to the day's negative sentiment after the hotter-than-expected CPI figures and the hawkish commentary from the FOMC members saw the Fed Fund futures market jump from a 3.8% likelihood of a June rate increase to 15%. The greenback finished flat, and the yield on the 10-year note was higher by 1 basis point to 1.76%. The Dow Jones ended the session off 180 points or 1%. The NASDAQ was lower by 60 points or 1.25%, and the S&P 500 finished down 19 points. Wednesday saw the EIA Petroleum Status Report and the FOMC minutes released. The EIA Petroleum Status Report for the week to May 13 saw a 1.3 million barrel build in crude oil inventories, and a draw of 2.5 million barrels of gasoline, and a draw of 3.2 million barrels of distillates. Crude oil initially dropped on the release of the report, however quickly recovered and moved higher. Minutes for the April FOMC meeting indicated there was a strong bias from the 17 members for a June rate hike if the economic outlook warranted it. The minutes also indicated that a few FOMC members desired to raise rates at the April meeting. The Fed Fund futures jumped for the second day in a row, from Tuesday's 15% probability to ending Wednesday's session at a 33.8% probability of a rate hike at the June meeting. This resulted in the non-cyclical utility sector getting slammed 1.9%. The yield on the 10-year note jumped 7 basis points, and the greenback rallied following the release of the minutes. The Dow Jones Industrial Average finished the session flat, the NASDAQ was higher by 0.5%, and the S&P 500 also finished flat. On Thursday, the initial jobless claims were down 16,000 for the week May 14 to 278,000. This was slightly above consensus of 275,000. However, the 4-week moving average was higher by 7,500 to 275,750. The regional Philly Fed General Business Conditions Index came in at negative 1.8 with a consensus expectation at 3, indicating a contraction within the regional manufacturing sector. The major averages struggled in Thursday's session as investors continued to focus on the hawkish commentary from the FOMC members. The US dollar ended the day marginally higher. Crude oil rallied in the afternoon session to close at $47.30, slightly below 2016 highs. The Dow Jones Industrial Average finished lower by 91 points, the NASDAQ was off 27 points, and the S&P 500 was down 7.6 points. Friday's economic data was limited to one release, with existing home sales coming in above expectations at 5.45 million. Month-over-month sales increased 1.7%, and year-over-year sales increased an impressive 6%. The prices have also risen a median 5% higher in the month to 232,500, resulting in a year-over-year gain of 6.3%. The technology sector continued to be in play, with Applied Materials jumping 13.8% after beating earnings estimates and issuing an above consensus guidance. The greenback ended the day marginally higher, and the 10-year note closed out the session unchanged at 1.85%. The Dow Jones was higher by 65 points, the NASDAQ was up 57 points or 1.2%, and the S&P 500 was up 12 points. This has been the US Weekly Market Wrap for the week ending May 20, 2016, and I've been your host, Aaron First. I'll see you again next time.